There was a group of Christians who decided when the internet came up that they were going to kill me. And they created a website and an hourglass and the exact time they were going to assassinate me. When Aaron saw that, he said, if Christians want to kill my dad, I'm out. So I made a decision. I called my agent and I said,
Looking at what's happening in America now, what is your vantage point with everything going on with ICE and so on and so forth?
Yes, so I housed an illegal immigrant in my house for years. She was undocumented, and if you want to use language, she was illegal. And then I helped her get her green card. Then I helped her become an American citizen. She became an American citizen before I did. Most of the immigration conversations we're having right now are actually political. They're not human.
Wow.
Today's heresy is tomorrow's orthodoxy. People were killed because they said the earth was round. We can take our own opinions and turn them into truths. I don't resonate with megachurch pastors. I don't know if I would come to faith through them. The frequency at which they speak creates a violation in my soul, usually.
Modern Christianity is an adversarial position against creativity, innovation, imagination, and human uniqueness. I think that's a fundamental problem for the church. That's a quote you wrote. I wonder, do you still feel that way?
This is The Deep End with Lecrae.
What's going on, everybody? It's Lecrae, and welcome to the workshop. The workshop is a place where you guys can understand my thought process. You guys are going to be able to unpack and dig into some of the old albums, some of the last several albums that I've done. And on top of that, it's a place where you're going to hear new music and some surprises. Make sure you stay tapped in. Let's build together. See you on the other side.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited, but there's so many other people that I know that are excited about me having this conversation. And for various different reasons, I have what some would call a man of mystery here. Just because, you know, when you think of a pastor of a church across multiple campuses in multiple countries, you don't also think of filmmaker, fashion designer, and cultural architect in a lot of different ways. And so also an incredible author who's authored a lot of amazing books as well. But I have the one and the only Erwin McManus here with us today. And good sir, I'm honored to have your presence.
I'm so glad to be here, man. What a great introduction. I'm going to cut that out and give it to my wife. Every morning I want her hearing that. No.
Yeah, prophets not honored in their own home sometimes. But yeah, no, I mean, cultural architect is really a way I would say that I see you. Because you're able to take, you know, a supernatural reality and then marry it in the reality that we're here now. And even as we were talking earlier about the clothing that you're coming with, I won't put the beans out there, but just that idea of the visible and the invisible, where faith and culture collide. And I love that. That's like one of the places where I exist. How did that, like, formatively, like, is that who you always were, even as a child? Like, how did that come about?
Well, I'm an immigrant from El Salvador, and Spanish was my first language. And I grew up in a basically irreligious home, but not anti-religious, which is different. And my grandfather was an atheist, but he was actually one of those very spiritual atheists where he would have believed in darkness, but not God. And then my grandmother was historically Roman Catholic, but we never went to mass.
Okay.
I never really knew my real father. He was a linguistic, knew like 6 to 10 languages, and I'm not really sure what his background was, but he was an alcoholic and a genius and just this broken human being. And then my mom was really a very spiritual person in terms of openness. I remember we became Buddhists when I was young. She brought a Buddha home, and we started trying to practice Buddhist practices. And then she was reading a rabbi and became Jewish for a season in her life. And she was really searching for God. She was really trying to make sense of life. And I think that opened up the world of questions to me. You know, so by the time I was in 6th grade, I read every mythology book in the library. And for some reason, I thought mythology might carry the story of humanity. And so I just began looking there because I didn't know to look. I didn't know there were Bibles. I didn't know anything about Christianity, really. And so that was sort of like where my journey sort of began, but I was always deeply spiritual. I always felt there was something transcendent about us. I always felt that there was something beyond the material world, but I didn't have any way of grounding that in a faith. And so when I was in college, and just even before then, by the time I was 10 years old, I was in a psychiatric chair. I was in a hospital, in and out for months. I was really, really broken. And it was really so shattered, my family didn't know what to do with me. And they were giving me all these tests to see if I was, at that time, like mentally challenged. And back then, they would just say you were retarded. And I was a straight D student. I would disappear into imaginary lands and wouldn't come back. I'd wake up and the whole class would be gone from elementary school. They just gave up trying to bring me back into consciousness. And so I was disappearing into all these imaginary worlds and really disconnecting from the real world around me. And I think I was just trying to adjust to pain. You know, there was just so much I didn't understand in life, and I was asking big questions from a really young age. So, of course, I ended up finally going to college, and I became a philosopher. And I started studying, you know, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato. In fact, I pretty much went through the gambit, studied pretty much every philosopher from the Greeks to modern time, but not because I thought it was an intellectual, or not because I was interested in academics at all. I was trying to see if anyone could make sense of life. And so I would pour through, you know, Thoreau's Walden, not because it's a good book in terms of like, it's not like scintillating reading. I would read it trying to figure out, can he make sense of my existence? Can he help me make sense of me? So I think in some sense, God kind of prepared me for Jesus in that way, where I had exhausted all my options, and I had looked at all these different religions and looked at different, you know, philosophies, and didn't even consider Jesus, to be honest with you. I remember being in a class in philosophy, and the professor opened up the Old Testament and read some place where God commands to kill people. And then he said, and this is supposed to be the God of love. And we all laughed. And so in my mind, I had already examined Christianity and discounted it from that 30 seconds of someone misusing the Bible. But it worked on me, right? In that moment. And then my mom gave me a call when I was around 20 and said that she was a Christian. I had no idea what that was. I thought she joined the Peace Corps. She was now a humanitarian. I didn't know. I didn't know it was a faith system. But I was happy for her because I could hear it in her voice that she was happy, that she had found something meaningful. And so I was super happy for her until I went home for the summer from college. And now my two sisters had become Christians, and my brother, who was an atheist, he was older than me, was now reading the Bible and going to church. And I told him he was a hypocrite. You know, he's an atheist. He shouldn't be going to church. And I felt like somehow they were all being sucked into this system or something. So I became really suspicious of Christianity and what are they doing to my family? And then I asked my brother, what are you doing going to church? And he said, well, there's great volleyball and beautiful girls. That made sense to me. So I said, you know, I could use a little religion in my life. And so I went with them to play volleyball and to meet beautiful girls. And unexpectedly was encountered with this message of Jesus. And the idea that God saw me and that I mattered and that he was relentlessly pursuing me with his love was almost unbelievable. And I remember thinking to myself, if this isn't true, it should be true. And because when you look at all the religions in the world and every system that tells you how to move toward enlightenment, you know, or nirvana or heaven or whatever it may be, paradise, it's always what we need to do to get to God. And Jesus was the first time I ever heard a narrative about God, of what God had to do to get to us. And I thought, you know, everything else is eliminated by the virtue of who's responsible to find the other. Because if I'm more powerless, I shouldn't be expected to power my way to find the powerful one. It's the one who's more powerful who should actually try to find me. And so it only made sense to me that if God really was love and if God really did exist, that he would be the proactive one. He'd be one searching for me. And then I spent my life running from love, and all I had to do was turn around and let it catch up to me. And that's really what I feel like. People ask, well, what made you believe? Desperation. I'm just gonna be straight up.
Yeah.
I didn't read the Bible through. I had never seen a Bible. I didn't know you can have one. I didn't have any theological or philosophical basis to believe in Jesus at all. I just said, God, if you're out there, and Jesus, if you're real, I'm in. And it was a last, for me, grasp of hope that maybe God really was out there.
Yeah.
And this is where you can't really say everything's objective, because all I know is that I had an encounter with God that changed me.
Yeah.
And there is proof in time. If I said in that moment, I've just met God, it's fair enough to say, well, let's see. Maybe so, maybe not. But 5 years later, I'm going, there's a lot of proof that I met God in that moment. And because it didn't just change my actions, it changed my inner world. It changed the part of me that no one can get to.
Yeah.
And it changed the part of me that I couldn't even get to.
Right.
And so that's a bit of my story.
No, I love that. It's, there's so much in there. There's a lot of richness in there. One of the things you said, just in terms of like that existential experience, you can't prove it to people, but through lived experience, there's fruit, there's evidence of that. And I say that often.
You can't prove you're in love with your wife. I've been married for almost 42 years, and I cannot empirically prove I love Kim. Except 42 years later, I'm still here. And that the proof is in the reality of it.
Yeah. That's a great, I just stole that. Thank you for that. It's interesting, you mentioned, like, I can see it now hearing you articulate your journey through philosophy and dealing with some of the issues with your people in your family and whatnot. The idea of this, like this, young pastor who is coming from a world where he's kind of explored a lot of different things and has landed at this place of love. I think, when I first began to hear about you, or back in the day, it was mixed with like, people were skeptical and people were intrigued. And part of me wonders, was it because you had a way of speaking philosophically and speaking to the cultural narratives of the day? And I think people were like, wait, why doesn't he just be very didactic and say this and say this and say that? Was there a method, or were you just living out your reality? Like, what was the thought around that time? Yeah,
well, you took the assessment on the 7 frequencies of communication.
Yeah.
And maybe the best way I can explain the difference is through those frequencies. And because as I glanced at yours as I was driving up here, your frequencies came out: healer, and then your challenger.
Yep. And another C.
And commander.
Commander. Yeah.
Yes. And those were fairly high in the 40s. And your 7th frequency is something called a maven. And almost every person I've graphed, their number 7 is maven.
Wow.
But it's my number 1.
Ah.
And so when you're looking at even communication frequencies, we tend to trust people who speak the frequencies we speak. And probably in the world where I grew up in faith, if there were 10,000 people, there may have been 3 mavens.
Okay.
And the leaders of the Christian movement, their number 7 would be mavens. And so when I'm speaking on a frequency, thinking I'm communicating clearly with them, they're not hearing what they need to hear. And then when they're communicating faith to me, I'm not hearing what rings true to me. And so there's a huge miss throughout that time. But I will say, I tried really hard to fit in. You have a very kind way of saying what people said about me. I mean, I have always been in the category of a heretic all my Christian life, all my life as a follower of Jesus. And I've always thought that was astonishing to me, because I realized, I mean, if you gave me like a little litmus test, I'll give myself one. All right, do I believe Jesus is God? Yes. Do I believe that, God came in flesh and blood? Yes. Do I believe Jesus is the only way into a relationship with God? The answer is yes. Do I believe in the spiritual authority of the scriptures? Absolutely yes. And let's go more specific. I believe Adam and Eve were real people. I believe that Elijah prayed fire down from heaven, that Moses parted the Red Sea. I don't know how much more orthodox you can get. I believe that Mary was a virgin and gave birth to the Son of God. So I'm like, all right, if you gave me the test, I pass that test. What I don't pass is the test that no one knows that they're giving. I do not see reality the same way.
Oof.
And I always thought if I believed the same things about the Bible and about God, that I would be seen as an insider.
Yeah.
But I never saw reality the same way. I never saw humanity the same way. Never saw life the same way. And so we're looking at things from such different filters. If I can give you an example just from another world.
Yeah.
You have some people who are trying to solve, let's say, the climate crisis. And maybe it's Bezos or Soros or whoever it might be. And so the way they're trying to solve the climate crisis is, let's get rid of petroleum. Let's figure out how to clean the oceans, the atmosphere. Let's get rid of plastics, right? And so they're giving us a strategy for how to save Earth. But Elon Musk's strategy is, let's colonize another planet. So he starts the boring company so you can drill under the Earth so you can actually build a civilization on Mars. And he builds artificial intelligence and robotics so he has employees to work on Mars to build the civilization before humans move there. And he builds SpaceX so that he can actually get us all to Mars, and he builds Tesla so that we can actually function and travel in Mars without petroleum. And so he's solving the same problem from a completely different paradigm, and he looks insane. And so that line of insanity and genius is there. And this really became clear to me around 1993 or so, when I saw this study about this whale that sings at 52 hertz. And it's the only whale in the world that sings at that frequency. And so it's called the loneliest whale in the world because it cannot find another whale. And another whale cannot find it. Because whales sing at about 40 hertz.
Yeah.
And so it's literally because they sing and hear on different frequencies, they cannot find each other. And I felt that in my faith.
Yeah.
Was that I'm trying to fit in, but I don't know how to sing at the frequency that's there. But what I did discover, and I think this was my own spiritual journey, was I wasn't here to have a conversation with everyone that already believed. I was here to talk to people who would never hear the voice of God in the frequency that the church was emitting into the world.
Wow.
And that I needed to get over not being accepted.
Yep.
And be a voice for those who might never be accepted unless I speak to them.
Yeah. It's interesting, even the book and the choice of words is, it speaks to the culture, but I can see religious communities being afraid of the word frequency.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know every time you use language. And when I wrote The Barbarian Way 20 years ago, I got a feedback from editors, use the word mystic. You need to take it out of there. And then one of my team members said, hey, you used the word mystic and people are going to really put you in a heretical category. So I added it to the book another 20 times. Because I'm going, how in the world did Christianity become a non-mystical religion? I mean, Moses is talking to a burning bush. That's pretty mystical.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, God is speaking to Elijah through the wind. And I'm like, that's pretty mystical.
Yeah.
And God telling Ezekiel to speak to the wind, pretty mystical. And I think that what I was really resisting is that Christianity became a belief system rather than a transcendent experience of the creator of the universe. And I was fighting. So I think that I was misunderstood because I was fighting for the primal things that I think make our faith unique.
Yeah.
And and so it's language like frequency. But I remember 40 years ago using words like energy, and my wife hated it. 30 years ago, I hate that word. Don't use it. It's new age, And I go, but we humans are all energy, and I love physics. I love science, and I say, honey, the mythology was that mass and energy were two different things. Science tells us that everything's energy moving at different speeds.
Yeah.
It's the way we can understand God. God is light, so he's moving at, in a sense, the speed of light, and Jesus is God slowing down to the speed of humans.
That's good.
And then the Holy Spirit is God moving in and out, weaving in through time and space. And so when you think about even God moving as energy, it's pretty extraordinary. But that language didn't fit. But now we have energy drinks. You cannot know how much fun it was for me when I started pulling energy drinks off the shelf, showing my wife, look, energy bars. Now energy is a common word.
Yeah.
And even when I coined the phrase cultural architect, that phrase had never existed. And now I saw that last month it was someone at TED doing a TED Talk speaking as a cultural architect. And
I love that phrase, by the way.
a lot of language that I created has become normative in society.
Yeah.
But what happens is that when you see something in the future, there's usually not present language to explain it. And so I know when I talk about human frequencies, I'm going to get burned at the stake, you know, but it's okay because 20 years from now, long after I'm forgotten, it will become the natural normative language of our faith.
Yeah.
And it will actually make us relevant to the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think so much of things that God has created have been co-opted by, you know, other groups and thinkers, and Christians in many ways have just given it over. Like, well, they have that word now, I guess we can't have it anymore. And it makes a lot of sense. I'm actually curious because you have, like you were talking about, looking at things from a different angle, you know, with the Elon example that you gave, like you even being, I'm curious two things. So one, I'm curious about like how you see your immigrant story, right? Like how you see that and how that experience was for you. And then looking at what's happening in America now, like what is your vantage point with everything going on with ICE and so on and so forth, because you do look at things from different angles, and I'd be curious to see, like, how do you see this?
It's funny because years ago when Bill O'Reilly had a show on Fox, they called me up and asked me to come speak on immigration.
Yeah.
And then I gave them my position and they uninvited me.
Oh, wow.
And I said, why? And they said, well, we need you to choose an extreme position on one side or the other.
Okay.
And I said, but both extreme positions are wrong. And they said, yeah, they literally told me, you're too thoughtful for our show. We need people who are extremists because that's how Bill plays off of people.
Wow.
And I think that's the problem, is that our cultural conversation is all about extremes. And neither extreme is ever right.
That's good.
Because they're blind to the realities on the other side. I am an immigrant, and I have little moments where my grandfather prepared me, because I was raised by my grandparents when I was a small boy. And my grandfather would prepare me to come to the States. And he couldn't speak English, but, you know, he understood America. You know, and he gave me 5 accents for how to say water. He said, Americans don't say water the same. And he started saying it like a New Yorker, like a Texan, like a Southerner, like a Californian. Wow. And so he taught me to listen to the linguistic nuances when you're learning a new language. And then he told me, hey, when you go to the States, they're going to call you an Indian. And they're going to call you an Indian because they made a mistake and landed on the wrong continent. And then he said, do not let another man's mistakes define who you are.
This man is brilliant.
He was brilliant. And then I'm 5 years old, and he pulls out a map, explains to me that the Asians migrated across the Bering Strait and colonized the Americas, and how we're actually all rooted in even the same cultures that are divided across different continents. And he just gave me such a broad global perspective on humanity that we're always migrating and moving to new places. And so for my brother and I, because he was 2 years older than me, coming to the States and learning English, you immediately know what it's like to be an outsider. And I think that's one of the interesting things about language. When you learn a new language, you know what it's like to be an outsider looking in. But later, you actually know how to see the world from a multi-dimensional perspective. People who speak multiple languages actually have parts of their brain that function that aren't active, and people only speak one language. And so I have a lot of friends who speak with an accent, and they're embarrassed. And I'll always tell them, hey, the reason you have an accent is that you're smarter than people who do not. Because you are now speaking another language that you didn't begin with.
Wow. Wow.
And then people ask me why I don't have an accent. My mom has a very, very heavy accent. And my mom is a linguistic genius. She could speak without an accent. But she was a beauty queen and was a Pan Am stewardess, you know. And I said, Mom, why didn't you get rid of your accent? She goes, it gave me a strategic advantage.
Ah.
And it's true. It was very elegant and everything like that. But for me, it was different. I watched a guy named Peter Jennings, who was a newscaster when I'm 8, 9, 10 years old. And I decided I'm going to learn his accent. And so I learned at a very early age that the key to language learning is listening. And it made me a really, really good listener. So wherever I moved, within a week, I had that accent. So when I lived in Queens, I was from Queens. When I lived in North Carolina, I was a Southerner. When I moved to Texas, I had a Texas accent. You know, I mean, and no matter where I moved, the accent just became mine really, really fast. And as an immigrant, what you realize is that the world is much bigger than we think. But I will say this, and I know you want to, you know, are asking me about immigration and ICE and everything like that. There are several things that really stand out to me. One is that most of the immigration conversations we're having right now are actually political. They're not human. And because for most of my experience in the States, this has been a practical reality of illegal immigration, of trying to figure out how do you bring people in, how do you not let people in. It took me decades to become an American citizen. I didn't become an American citizen until I was 50, because El Salvador really isn't like a favored nation. And so you could be from another country and become a citizen faster. My wife, who was always politically against, quote, illegal immigration, she always hired 30, 40, 50 people who were not legal, and would give every single person she met a job. I said, honey, you're the most pro-undocumented person I've ever met in my life. And so sometimes we're for something as a concept, but we're actually against it on a human level. And I think that's the problem, is that am I, you know, for deporting everyone here illegally? Not all the people I love, you know, not all the people I know. And because it changes its meaning, right? And also, you know, am I for protecting the borders? Yes, if my family has been violated or injured or hurt. And a lot of it's really a human problem in the most personal ways. I think a lot of this is being politicized. I mean, when President Obama was president, he deported at least 3 million people. And Clinton was against open borders and was for very, very, very limited immigration. You know, Bush actually was married into a Mexican family. And so he was psychologically more open to open borders, but a lot of times their policies don't even match what they believe. And I think what's happening now is Trump's language was so filled with vitriol that you were able to politicize it and go, you see, he's against immigrants. And he doesn't help himself. By the way, he says things. But he hasn't been as extreme as Hillary Clinton has been. She just said it differently. And then Clinton said it in extreme ways, but he still felt like he was warm and caring. And so sometimes it's less about the language or the policy as it is almost like the radioactive material you're sending out. Am I for the outsider? So, you know, so for me, I'm very, very practical in that. I know that nations need to have borders.
Sure.
And I know there needs to be security. And I know that there are millions of really good people that are here that came undocumented. And we have a very personal story. There was a young girl who was 15 or so years old, came here illegally, didn't even know she was here illegally. And she came on a bus. They didn't stop her. She happened to be very, very pretty. And I think that, you know, she got pretty privileged even though she was undocumented. And came across, but now she was living in a really violent home and having to protect little children from being beat and abused. My wife said, you're bringing Patty home from church today on Sunday, and we're going to give her a place to stay tonight. And she stayed 12 years. She was undocumented, and if you want to use language, she was illegal. Yes, so I housed an illegal immigrant in my house for years. And then I helped her get her green card. Then I helped her become an American citizen. She became an American citizen before I did. We put her in kindergarten. She went from kindergarten to 12th grade in 3 years. Got a college degree from University of California here, Cal State LA, and then went as a missionary to Indonesia for 10 years to work with Muslims with her husband and kids, and now lives here. And so we have the full immigrant story, you know, of someone who began as someone undocumented. So was I for that undocumented person? Of course. And that's why for me, you know, you can talk about political things, but let's just talk about human things and see if we can get to a good place together.
It sounds to me like, I mean, this may not be what you're saying, but one, it's nuanced. And then two, you know, oftentimes politics can be much like the Pharisees saying, hey, Jesus, do we eat on the Sabbath or do we not? Do we give Caesar this coin or do we not? And it sounds like, you know, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You know,
I think to say that President Biden, by leaving the border so open and having almost no relations, didn't create a problem is to be dishonest. And to say that ICE, through its almost hostile language, isn't creating a cultural problem is dishonest. And it's going to take someone or some people to just say there are real problems in both sides of this, and that's why we're where we're at.
Yeah.
But if we could actually care about people, we might find a solution that works. And because there are so many people here, and by the way, the whole idea of a dual economy is kind of scary to me, because when you're looking, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm just going to say that straight up. I voted for President Obama twice. You know, I don't usually say that publicly, but I'm just going to go ahead and just like lay that out there, okay?
Yeah.
So you understand my perspective on this. And when you say we need to allow undocumented people to come and work in the farms and the fields and everything else, what you're actually saying is that you're pro an underground slavery system. Because when you're raising minimum wage, see, listen to the language. We want to raise minimum wage to $50 an hour, which means that you're going to get a pretty good salary, and you're not going to have to work the farm jobs or something like that. So what's happening, and I know this because I'm in the fashion industry. What ends up happening is that you create a system where you allow people to enter the country to be paid dollars, and then you raise the minimum wage to $50 an hour. So you're creating an unstated slavery system. So my point is, if you're going to let people in who are undocumented, then we should be forced to pay them what we're paying everyone here who is documented. To say, well, who's going to take care of our kids, and who's going to farm the lands, and who's going to work the crops? And I've heard even Nancy Pelosi say things like that. What she's actually saying is, where's our slave class going to come from if we don't allow undocumented people to come? And I'm like, we should not be allowing a slave class. If you're going to let them in, protect them. If we need to force ourselves to pay for the people we allow to be here, and by paying them for the jobs they work. And so I think that's the part that concerns me. Sometimes we don't think about the implications of what we're saying.
What do you tell the church in terms of rising above like partisanship and moving toward compassion toward their neighbor? Like, how do you facilitate a thought like this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a little different for Mosaic in that Mosaic is probably 90% socialist and Democrat.
Okay.
You know, it's a pretty far left community. We're in LA. I've been here, 35 years of my life, and I didn't come here to change their political position. I came here to connect them to Jesus.
Touche.
And I have a lot of confidence in God doing His part and me doing my part, and I feel like my part is helping people have a life-changing experience of who Jesus is, and God's part is changing them and growing them, and so when people ask me, that's why I have a Mindshift podcast, because I am a human being with opinions, which is different than a pastor who's opening up the scriptures on Sunday.
Yeah, and
on Sunday I'm trying not to give my opinions. I'm trying to give people what the scriptures say God is saying to us.
Yeah.
But I also want to give myself permission to talk about stuff I want. I want to be able to say I don't like the Lakers, and, in LA, even though it's controversial. I want to say I like Steph Curry better than LeBron James. But some people act like when you're a pastor, you're only allowed to talk about this. I don't take a position as a Democrat or a Republican, but I do talk about issues, and I do talk about the bad thinking on any position, any perspective. And so for a long time, people thought, they were sure I was like a pure liberal. And And then during the pandemic, people thought, oh, no, he's gone super conservative. And it really isn't that. It's the issue. And I'm okay being a liberal on Tuesday and a conservative on Wednesday if the issue demands that kind of perspective. And I also think it's important to weigh the balance of things. When I have a lot of people listening to me who are only, let's say, conservative, I make them hear the intelligent liberal position.
Okay.
And if I know I have people who are listening to me who are very liberal, I make them hear the intelligent conservative position. I get tired of people pretending they're fighting against someone's position when it's not their position.
Yeah.
I say, no, I should be able to say, Lecrae, this is what you believe. This is how you see it. And you go, yes, that's right. Then I can debate that. Then I can talk about that. But when I pretend you're saying one thing,
Yeah.
so that I can win an argument,
Yeah.
that's just deceptive and destructive.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
So I just finished 75 hard, and let me tell you, it was tough. And if you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts or skincare or sleep, or just making it through a busy day, hydration's where it starts. That's what helped me get through my days most of the time. The right electrolyte powder can make all of the difference, and that's why DripDrop has been a game changer for me. But there's so many powders on the market that don't taste good, or they just don't work as well as they claim they do. And that's why I started using DripDrop. It's a science-backed formula that works fast. It tastes better than any other electrolyte drink I've tried. And when I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, my skin. But just getting enough fluids every day is not gonna be enough. That's why you gotta use DripDrop. Now, DripDrop is doctor-developed, proven hydration. DripDrop uses a precise ratio of sodium electrolytes and glucose for rapid fluid absorption. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar versus the leading sports drink. You can feel the difference very fast, and it's less fatigue, more focus, and no more midday crash. DripDrop is a breakthrough hydration formula backed by science, which is why it's trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top pro and college sports teams. There's lots of electrolyte powders on the market, but I haven't tried one that works as well or tastes as good as DripDrop. Plus, there's just too many fun flavors. Let's be real. 16 original formula flavors, 8 zero sugar options as well, which is very important for me, especially doing what I did. And to make it easy, DripDrop has flexible subscription options, so you never are stuck without a proven fast hydration. Right now, DripDrop is offering this podcast 20% off to all the listeners on the first order. So make sure you go to DripDrop.com, use the promo Lecrae. That's DripDrop.com, promo Lecrae. You get 20% off.
I love it. Gray area, nuance. Like that's the essence of like why I even have this podcast, is because people don't like to wrestle with the nuance of things. You know, I often have used the example of my first time going to Paris, and I couldn't speak the language and I was frustrated by it. And I was hungry, and I was like, I just opted for McDonald's because I didn't feel like learning how to read a menu. And you know, I missed out on some amazing food because I wasn't ready to wrestle with the nuance.
Yep.
You know, and so it's like sometimes we just choose what's easy because we don't want to wrestle with the complications of things.
Paris is a perfect example of what we're talking about, because most Parisians do speak English. They won't speak English to you because they're offended you won't speak French. So when I go to Paris, I always go like this. Mira, yo quiero coger algo comer, y ellos, habla español. And they'll say, no español. And I said, oh, no habla español. They go, no. I said, hablas inglés, English. They go, yes, English. And so when I start in Spanish and they're starting in French, they're happy to meet me in English.
That's hilarious.
And that's how I've learned to have conversations politically. I start from a place you're not against.
Okay.
And so that you can share where you're for, so that we can actually meet somewhere else.
Wow. That's good. I want to read a quote to you.
All right.
It's an old quote. And it says this: modern Christianity is an adversarial position against creativity, innovation, imagination, and human uniqueness. I think that's a fundamental problem for the church. That's a quote you wrote historically. I wonder, do you still feel that way?
Do I still feel that's true?
Yeah, that is it an
Yeah, the reason I hesitate is, yes, I still agree with that statement.
okay.
But I think we've made progress.
Okay.
And that's why I hesitate. I don't hesitate for what I said. I hesitate because I think we're growing.
Okay.
I think we are changing.
What do you mean?
And
Please? Yeah.
I remember 40 years ago when I first said that all human beings are artists, all human beings are creative. The pushback was unbelievable. I mean, I was placed in a heretical camp when I said that all human beings are creative. Now, that's hard for you to imagine because the world has changed that much in 40 years.
Yeah.
I was in New York, in Manhattan, doing a lecture on human creativity. And in the Q&A, someone stood up opposing my view that all human beings are inherently creative, artistic. They said, you're actually giving us a formula for anarchy. That's what they told me.
Wow.
And you're advocating that all human beings are creative. Who's going to do the work?
Huh.
And I remember I said, you're giving the same argument they did to preserve slavery.
Wow.
If every man's free,
Yeah.
who is going to do the work?
Yeah.
And when I remember speaking to several theologians, because our fifth core value at Mosaic is creativity is the natural result of spirituality. And this is the feedback I got. I still remember the quotes. One theologian said, human beings are like worker bees. They need an assignment to feel fulfilled. And the other person was kinder and said, you're putting undue pressure on people to tell them that they're creative. And I remember I was searching everywhere for some kind of advocacy. I even called my brother across the country because I thought maybe my brother will support my view. And he said, why creativity? Why would that be the natural result of spirituality? I just disagree with you. And I understand why. Because Christianity looked very uncreative. Because the church was actually against creativity. Discipleship was equated with standardization and conformity and compliance. It was really the enemy of human uniqueness. But if you don't know anything about Christianity and you read Paul, and he starts talking about spiritual gifts, he's talking about how every one of us have different gifts and different parts of the body, that's a view of human creativity that actually did not exist in the Greek world, in the Roman world. Even all the way up to 200 years ago, human beings were seen as cogs. We were just pieces of machinery. I mean, the Industrial Revolution just tried to make us a part of the machine. And yet Paul, thousands of years ago, is saying, no, every human being is unique. And those uniquenesses create an interface where we become more than the sum total of the parts. Meaning that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading the Bible going, no, actually, human uniqueness is the value in the scriptures. But I had complete resistance everywhere in Christianity. And one of the verses that's subtly used is Solomon's words in Ecclesiastes that there's nothing new under the sun. Everywhere I went in the world, they would say, they were like patting me on the head theologically. Erwin, there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. It's the easiest way to discount any new idea I had. There's nothing new under the sun. And I was in my living room. I said to my wife, I can't take it anymore. Solomon was wrong. And she said, you are going to hell. and I said, honey, Solomon was wrong. And she goes, please don't say that outside of our house. Because she loves me, doesn't want me to always be a heretic. And I said, you can't trust a man when he says everything is meaningless to give you the worldview you need. And I started showing her how in other places, Ecclesiastes, we know Solomon's wrong. When he says that animals and humans are the same, we know he's wrong. When he says that we all just go to dust and remain in dust, we know he's wrong. He says a lot of things in Ecclesiastes that we know are wrong. But when he says there's nothing new under the sun, the reason we accept that is we think he's right. And yet in Ezekiel 43, 18 and 19, it says, put away the former things, do not dwell on the past. Behold, I am doing a new thing. And now it springs up, but will you see it? And so then you look, Solomon says, there's nothing new under the sun. But God says, I'm doing a new thing. I'm going to create a new covenant. I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to give you a new mind. I'll put it inside of you a new spirit. And he gives us a new testament. And there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. So it seems like God's saying everything I'm doing is new. And then Solomon's saying there's nothing new under the sun. Well, that's because when you live your life outside of God, you get trapped in an endless cycle of meaninglessness. You're a part of the created order. But when you come in connection with God, you're now part of the creative order, and everything becomes new. And so I actually think theologically the church has shifted.
Okay.
And I still remember, I don't know if we're allowed to say his name, but because people are so weird, but I was going to do a TV show with with Brian Houston. I don't think I've ever said this publicly. And right before we went on, and I didn't know Brian very well, but he knew me over the years from, writings and different things. And he said, do you ever have like a wrong opinion of someone when you didn't know them? And then you get to know them and you realize that you're wrong. And I said, Brian, I know what you're saying. You thought I was a heretic. And now that you know me, you know that you're wrong. And I said, it's okay. You don't need to apologize. And he goes, well, it's just that I didn't know you're so much for the church. And I said, no, you thought I was against the church because I was against the way the church was doing church. And I felt like the church needed to go back to the church the way it's supposed to be doing church. And then I said, hey, Brian, by the way, today's heresy is tomorrow's orthodoxy. And then right before we walked on the set, he goes, oh, I hope not. And the reason I bring up that story is that people were killed because they said the earth was round. And because we were convinced the Bible said the earth was flat. I mean, people were put in the heretical camp and killed because they said that the earth revolves around the sun. Because, of course, the earth is the center of the universe. We can take our own opinions and turn them into truths. And so we're really not fighting over truth. We're fighting over opinions, and they are orthodoxy. And I think the one advantage I have is I didn't have an orthodoxy to protect. I came to faith. I wasn't a Baptist or a Pentecostal. I wasn't charismatic or Presbyterian. I opened up the Bible, and I did not have preset beliefs. I let the Bible tell me what it actually says. And when I read it, I was astonished by it. And in the moment I said it, and other people didn't agree, I was shocked because I'm like, this is what it says. I'll give you a perfect example. I would tell my wife, there's no way that creation is 7 days, 24 hours. And she goes, yes, it is. You're going to hell. Like, that's her default, and she grew up Baptist. And I said, honey, the sun didn't even exist till day 4. So after day 4, you can argue. But up to day 4, those can be millions of years. Because you have to have a solar system to have a human calendar. On top of that, I've been to Sweden, where it wasn't night
Sun doesn't
for 6 months and day for 6 months or wherever parts of so they don't even have 24-hour days on this earth now. And yet we're so confined by our own experience, and we interpret the Bible that way. Now, what I'm not saying is God couldn't do it in 6 days. Of course, he could do it in 6 minutes. He could do it in 6 blinks of an eye. That's not the point. The point is that we start taking our understanding of the Bible and equating it with what the Bible is actually saying.
Yeah. There's a saying, and for clarity, I hear what you're saying, but I want to reemphasize, like, what you're not saying is that the Bible's inaccurate. What you are saying is that our interpretation of the Bible is oftentimes, or what we bring to the Bible is oftentimes a lens that's inaccurate. And
what I am saying is the Bible is accurate.
Right.
And we shouldn't be afraid of it when it disagrees with us.
Yes. Yeah, there's a saying, I guess they say, what is it? The Bible said it, I believe it, that settles it. And then there's space in there where it's like, the Bible said it, you misinterpreted it, and that doesn't settle it. And so I think that's a big part. Because even like what you're saying, historical context and so on and so forth is everything. So what you're saying about Solomon, it's like, wait, he's got it wrong. The reality is that we have potentially embraced a vantage point of what he's saying from the wrong angle.
Yes.
And not wrestling with that. I'm curious though. So with you being this creative and this kind of like thinking outside of the box in a lot of different ways, some would call the American church like an industrial complex, right? You have opted in some ways to do a Sunday service, an oratorical style communication, music. Like, why have you adopted some of these more traditional forms of what church looks like?
Yeah, I would say I adopted every traditional form.
Okay.
And then remove them as I found them to be unhelpful. Because as opposed to what people think about me, I didn't throw everything out.
Okay.
I came to faith and I just humbled myself and did everything I was asked to do.
Okay.
And so I went to Sunday school. I went to church. I went to Wednesday night Bible study. I did. You tell me this is what we do. This is what I did. You know, I started reading the Bible in the King James. You know, I was memorizing scripture every day. So I didn't throw anything out. And I told myself, I know nothing about what it looks like to know God. I know nothing what it looks like to walk with Jesus. So I'm going to do everything they tell me to do until I figure out whether it's actually helpful to my own spiritual journey or not. And so I'm the opposite. I didn't throw everything out and then just pick and choose. I did everything and went, oh, wow, this is like Saul's armor on me. This doesn't fit, you know? And so in New York, we do church once a month.
Okay.
All right. So we're not working with the traditional structure.
Okay.
And in almost every place where we have Mosaic, it's more of a boutique.
Okay.
And so you would probably never walk into any place that is Mosaic that feels like a mega church.
Yeah.
And I always look for unexpected places, whether it's an art gallery or some kind of studio, and nightclubs. I mean, we're in nightclubs before they were popular.
Yeah.
You know, and we were in Prince's nightclub downtown, the Glam Slam, for years. And so I always looked for unexpected spaces that we could build and create. Humans are creatures of habit and pattern. And so if you don't do certain things enough, you don't have enough to build life-changing habits. If you do it too much, you create redundancy, and it becomes a rut. So you have to figure out how to mitigate those things as much as possible. Do I think doing church every single week is exhausting? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't speak all the time.
Okay.
You know, we have a whole community of people who speak. And so this past week I was in Mexico City and different people were speaking in LA, and and then I fly to New York once a month and do that campus there. But we have a lot of different people who speak. 2 weeks ago, I got up and just said hello and said, hey, there was a new campus. I want you to know I didn't speak today, not because I was out of town, but because we're a community of voices. And so I do everything I can to try to break some of the traditional structures of that, but recognizing that there is a reason why Jesus tells us to baptize and have communion. Those are the two rituals that I see Jesus really passing on to us. And communion is something that when you do it on a regular basis, it reminds you of what he's done and who you are. And so those things are important. You probably go to the same places to get coffee every day, right? You know, you probably get the exact same thing. Not because you're not free.
Sure.
Because in your freedom, you choose that experience.
Sure.
And so some of it is I just look at Sunday and go, we do Sunday every week, but we need to create anticipation and expectation. And Mosaic has never looked the same. And that's hard for people who were part of Mosaic 20 years ago.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, how does that work for those who are more traditional, and how do you not alienate
so
older
much
members?
Because I mean, in 1999, I had a young guy going up on the internet, this brand new experience. While I was speaking, he was pulling images down from the internet. I was cutting and making short films and using them in the middle of my talks. I was creating these experiences on Sunday where there was dance and film and stand-up comedy and people painting throughout the auditorium and someone doing metal work and sculpting. And I was creating these environments. We were building internal installations. So when you walked into this little storefront, it felt like you're in Paris or you're in Tokyo. And so we were constantly reinventing the experience. And probably some of it didn't even help, except that it allowed us to create. It allowed us to dream and to imagine. And we did some things that we're not the best ideas in the world. One Christmas I had this animated film that had a couple of guys create, and they had a war between Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where Rudolph pees on Frosty, wakes up yellow, and then they're going through this battle, and Rudolph is bringing a microscope, or no, what is it called, magnifying glass, trying to melt Frosty on Christmas Sunday morning, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? I mean, we did some of the dumbest things in the world, but it was because we're creating a space of experimentation and freedom. And I told myself, I want Mosaic to be the research and development arm of Christianity. And I want people to learn from our mistakes and our successes. And so I don't think that we are what people think, and there are a lot of churches that have told us historically that they made radical shifts in their culture because of Mosaic. Yeah. And they did it way better than us. I was our first worship leader. It was horrible. But because I was being influenced by Depeche Mode and Massive Attack, and I was really into trip hop, and so I was creating worship that probably wasn't of a genre that really creates the best kind of worship experience. But that's who I was, and that's what I'd have a band, and I'd put my instrument down and talk. Yeah, But what I was actually doing is saying, I'm an artist just like you, and I'm going to talk about Jesus. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a professional. Yeah, and it was more the space I was trying to fill, not really the talent that I was trying to bring. Yeah. And that was a part of the mix of the whole of Mosaic. So Mosaic's always evolved, always changed. We stopped using dance and art and film, actually, when my kids are growing up and going, hey, Dad, our generation just wants it to be simpler. And I go, cool.
That's great that you listen.
On Monday I go to my staff, no more of this, and this. And they're all like, they're just more mortified, going, wait a minute, but we're known for dance. We're known for film. We're known for art. And I go, oh, yeah, now they're going to have to re-know us. We've had 3 funerals for Mosaic that I can think of, where I've taken our staff and we take different pieces of art or literature that have Mosaic on it. And I put it in the middle and I set it on fire. And I said, today, all that Mosaic has been dies, and whatever you create is who Mosaic will become.
I'm curious, how do you your church and yourself don't fit in a neat box, right? You're a little too controversial for mainline evangelicalism. You're too business savvy for the Reformed group. You're not Pentecostal. You don't fit into the charismatic bunch. Like, how do you find community in light of being kind of outside of all these normative spaces?
It's been a pretty lonely journey. And when I first moved to LA, I had this imagery in my head. I said, I want to create a place for pioneers where they don't have to be alone. Because I think that if you choose the pioneer, or maybe you don't choose the pioneer, maybe you're chosen to pioneer. There's a calling, a compulsion. You're pretty much choosing to walk alone a lot. And you can't allow it to make you bitter. Okay. Because you can feel bitter going, well, no one understands me, no one loves me, no one appreciates me. I just saw it. I get the privilege of going first. And then people come as we go along. And so there are huge seasons in our life. And it was definitely hard on my wife, Kim, and definitely hard on our kids. Like Aaron and Mariah's a worship leader, And I remember she came to me, she goes, hey, Dad, Mosaic is sort of like a satellite outside of the planet of Christianity. And no one's going to sing our songs if you don't find a way to integrate us into the rest of Christianity. And I felt so bad for them because, Mariah is the kind of person, our daughter, that everyone just loves her, and she would be so naturally in the world of passion and elevation and VU and Hillsong and Maverick. But because she's Mosaic, she was always so outside that, we had to find a way to almost like be introduced to Christianity. And with Aaron, when he was in his 20s, and he's the one that was introducing me to Rich Wilkerson and Carl Lentz. I know it's a different world now, but and Chris Rousseau and Chad Beach. Those are all people that he discovered, and he said, "Hey, Dad, this is like my generation, a little older than me, but they need you in their lives." And so they asked him, and they brought me in, along the way, because I just knew that my life was to be an outlier. And I came to LA, and the moment you come to LA, it's a little different world. And I'm in Hollywood, right? It's a very, very different world. I'm purposely reaching people who are the furthest left in the world, and so I have to recraft the message, the culture, the nuance. There are things like I wasn't worried about COVID, but I shut Mosaic down for 18 months, and a lot of churches hated me for it, saying, "You're conforming to the culture. Why are you doing that?" And I said, because if I open up, everyone in Hollywood will feel like I'm irresponsible. I don't care what you think about me in Oklahoma or Texas or Florida. These are my people. I had a presidential candidate come to my house, knock on my door, came to try to convince me to advocate for him. He was Republican. And he kept saying, if we don't do this, they're going to do this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do this. And finally I said to him, "Hey, who are they?" And he said, Hollywood. And I said, I think you're confused. He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I am they." And he goes, "What?" And I said, "I'm not here fighting for all the conservative Christians. I'm actually not here trying to advocate for conservative Christian values in LA. I'm actually trying to help people who are so far away from mainstream Christianity that Jesus is on the same path, and they can find him here." And it's a whole different world. And I knew years and years ago, if I stayed in somewhere in the South or Midwest, I went to Chicago or Dallas, I could have had a mega church and could have had 20, 30,000 people. It's not that hard. I mean, just to be honest with you, and I looked at the nation. I thought, where's the hardest place to make Jesus relevant? And that's why I came here.
That's pretty powerful. I remember in college, I signed up for a credit card. Probably one of the worst decisions I ever made because I didn't know anything about credit. It deeply impacted my credit. It took me a while to climb out of that hole, and I don't want that to be your story, all right? So I want you to not go through the terrible journey that I went through. And if you ever feel like you're being punished for the mistakes you made years ago, that's what credit can feel like, right? There's finally a way out of this hole, though. I mean, when was the last time you thought about your credit score? And if your answer is never, well, don't worry, you're not alone. And here's the thing, a good score means better rates, lower payments, and bigger opportunities. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Ava. So Ava is a credit building app that makes it very easy to improve your credit fast. So you can get better rates on your loans, you can pay off your debts faster, and keep money in your pocket. Ava reports your on-time payments to all major credit bureaus every single day, which helps you build a very solid credit history very quickly. And the longer you stick with Ava, the higher your score goes up. Most members see their credit go up in like less than a week. For $6 a month, yeah, you heard that right, $6 a month, what you get access to is all of Ava's credit building tools. Ava's gonna keep it very low stress, very low cost, and super transparent. So make sure you all sign up. I need you to take control of your credit today. Download the Ava app, it's AVA, and listen, when you use my promo code Lecrae, Lecrae, if you didn't know how to spell it, your first month is totally free. That's right, it's free. So get the Ava app, use my promo code Lecrae so you can know for sure that your first month is gonna be free. Thanks to Ava, you get to do yourself a favor and get some good credit, all right? I wanna talk about, your book in the 7 frequencies.
Oh, yeah.
Before I do though, I'm curious, like historically you were on like a book tear in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Then you took a gap.
6 years.
Yeah. What happened in that gap, and then the gap to get where you are now?
How did you know to ask that question?
I didn't. I just.
Most people don't notice that.
Yeah, it was a pretty wide gap. It's a pretty long gap.
It is. From what I'm told, I was like in the top 5% of writers in the United States. And yeah, it was on path of selling, millions of books and things like that. And a few things happened. when there was a group of Christians who decided when the internet came up that they were going to kill me. And they created a website, slasher films, and an hourglass and the exact time they were going to assassinate me. And my wife panicked and called the police, FBI. They said the threats were legitimate. And by the way, strangely enough, it was a group of Reformed Calvinists who felt like I was, being destructive, to Christianity. When Aaron saw that, he said, if Christians want to kill my dad, I'm out. I'm out from the church. I'm out from God. I'm out. And so he, took it pretty hard. Something I felt like broke in his heart, his soul. So I made a decision. I called my agent and I said, I am no longer writing books, Christian books. And he thought I was leaving for another agency. Called the publisher and said, I'm out. And they were unhappy with me and they basically tanked my last book. And as a result of that. And I went 6 years where I didn't speak at Christian events and didn't write books. And all I did was, I didn't even really hardly lead Mosaic staff for about those 5-6 years. I was still associated with Mosaic because it was my community. I started a business, started a fashion company and a film company and had a tech division. And I did that so that my son would have a space for me to be his dad. I felt like the pressure of Christian celebrity was too much. And Mariah was a little bit younger and she didn't have the same reaction to it. It still damaged her, but, he was definitely, hurting. And I just made a decision, like, there are a lot of good Christian writers and a lot of great pastors, but my kids only have one dad. So I never thought I would come back. It wasn't a hiatus. It was, I remember sitting with Kim and saying, I'm going to take the next 20 years of my life. I'm just going to be an artist. And I'm going to design clothes, make films, and express my faith in a different domain. So I was 100% going in that direction. And very quickly, within 2-3 years, I had a multi-million-dollar company. So I do know how to live in that world, how to make it work. And I can't remember one day I got on my phone and I got a text from Aaron. He was in New York. He said, Dad, if we make films and make bags and clothes and don't take Jesus to the world, we've accomplished nothing.
Same son.
Who
was, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years earlier.
Wow.
And I thought someone stole his phone, and then Mariah and him must have ganged up on me because he flew home and said, Dad, I know you've been giving 80%. And, we need you at 100%. Then later he texts me, he goes, I was lying. You're not even giving 60%. And then Mariah came to me and she was crying. She was tearful. She said, I know you don't want to come back. And I know that you're planning to not be in this world. You have faith with the church, but we need you. And my kids told me that their generation needed me to be a voice to them. It's the only reason I came back.
Wow.
And I psychologically, if we take all these psychological tests, I have zero need for fame. I have zero need to be public. I have a high need for anonymity. And I don't even trust people who need to be on stages. It's hard for me. And I don't resonate with megachurch pastors. I don't know if I would come to faith through them. Because the frequency at which they speak creates a violation in my soul, usually. And so I thought, I don't fit anyway. And I did think, if you're a pastor, but you don't meet this criteria, you're always questioned. But if you're an artist and you meet some of it, they love you.
They celebrate you.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, maybe that's what I need to do is just change my domain. Be a fashion designer or a filmmaker that loves Jesus and they'll go, oh, look, he's one of us.
Yep.
But when you're creating the church and you're leading the church, it's a whole different criteria. And I think I was more of a threat. And I can tell you, Lecrae, I've never wanted to be a threat. Like, I love the church, you know, and I'm so committed to the movement of Jesus. I just think when you're talking about the industrial complex, I just never bought in to the industrial complex. And I think that's the unexpected thing. People thought that eventually I would.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So in my 20s, I was rebellious. And by the way, when I was in my 20s into my 30s, I worked with drug cartels mostly. I worked in the world of gangbangers and assassins and cartels and world of drugs and prostitution in the highest poverty areas. And they celebrated me in that time because you're in a different world. But the moment I shifted and then started creating a church that was a parallel to their church, but different, now it's more of a threat. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
You know, and it's kind of funny because when I work with billionaires now, I'm using the same principles I used with gangbangers. And because of what people don't realize, a lot of guys who are leading cartels and leading gangs, they're just brilliant. Like they just have such extraordinary minds. But they're just not going to work at McDonald's when they can make, $40-50 million with an underground economy, and they manage hundreds, if not thousands of employees. And the complexity of what they do is pretty extraordinary. And so I feel like God put me in that world because we underestimate the intelligence of the people leading those communities, organizations. And they need someone who can speak to them at their level. And I think it's the same principles that came when I worked here in the world of creatives and artists, and the same principle I work with, entrepreneurs and businessmen. Yeah.
I have to commend you. I think historically you've been grossly misunderstood. But you kept pressing forward, and a lot of people wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like I've been grossly misunderstood, and it made me just want to quit. I was much like Aaron. I was like, I'm done. And by the grace of God, it's like you keep pushing forward, and there's voices, or not voices, there's ears who need to hear what you're saying, even if there's so much opposition trying to shut you down. So I commend you for continuing to press forward. And after that wasn't a hiatus, that was I quit. And then which explains a lot actually, because it's like I totally understand. I'm just saying, wait, how can I use what I have to do something else, but still, I have friends like Jerry Lorenzo, good friend of mine. It's like he gets celebrated for like putting fear of God on some shirt, and it's like if I don't say enough about God, I'm crucified. And so I totally understand that. But a lot of this you were speaking earlier comes from, like you said, you being the maven, and there's within the book, The Seven Frequencies, there's just different frequencies, right? And I took the assessment, and I'm a healer, a challenger, and a commander. And each frequency has a shadow side. And as I was looking at the shadow sides, I saw, and just being transparent, I saw my challenger shadow side come out. It's like you can be a manipulator. You switch from calling people to their highest self to calling them to do what you need them to do. And it's kind of like I can see moments in my life where I'm championing somebody because it benefits me to champion them. And I'm like, ugh, gross. Some of these shadows are disgusting when you really look at them. Like, they're really nasty. But that's who we are. And so I'm just curious, like, with each of these shadow sides, they begin to serve themselves instead of others. When you look into our culture, when you look into our society now, I'm sure you see a lot of shadow sides and frequencies. Like, what are some examples and what are the dangers that you see?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about this is, by the way, most CEOs have told me, I didn't resonate with the frequencies until I read the shadows. They go, man, when I read the shadows, I could see myself all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason for that, is culturally we're being trained to only speak from our shadows. And one of the most popular TV shows and of this era has been Succession. And if you look at Succession, there are 7 main characters. They each carry one of the frequencies, but only from the shadows. You can watch every episode for every season and never move out of the shadows. Every one of them are ciphers, manipulators, dictators, performers, diminishers, perfectionists, and nihilists. And the characters are fascinating. And I think part of the challenge is that just because you're in your shadow, it doesn't mean you will not win. You may win. You may become incredibly successful. You may become richer and more powerful than the other person.
Wow.
Which is why it's hard to give up your shadows, because your shadows got you there. Your shadows made you. And I had one young pastor, well, now he's probably around 40, but super talented, incredibly gifted. And I love, one of my favorite people. So that's why I can use his example. We were talking about his messaging and how to help him grow. And I said, I think your next big step is you have to become authentic. In that you're a strong performer on stage. And you're so talented that you moved right to being a performer. Because that's what happens when you take a very young person and you make them a preacher. They jump right to their shadow because it's safe. And so I said, I want you to work on this next talk wherever you go to be authentic. He sends me a text. I tried to be authentic. It didn't go well. Because I think being authentic's harder than it seems. And it was almost like maybe I'm tapping out.
Wow.
Because when you're really gifted, you can be a performer or you can be a manipulator. And I thought it was different in the Christian world than the business world, to be honest with you. I thought, oh, wow, it's going to be so refreshing when I go into the business world. It's the same. maybe that's a good thing. It's a human problem. It's not a church problem. The industrial complex isn't just a church problem. It's a human problem. We create that complex wherever we go. We try to control people through guilt and shame. We try to standardize people and conform them and minimize their uniqueness. That's not just a church. That's human history.
Wow.
And when you listen to some of the speakers in the business world, you hear the manipulator, you hear the performer, you hear the dictator. And even if, without being overly political, I think a part of the challenge with like Trump, I think President Trump, I'll be respectful, President Trump is a commander, but I think he flows into dictator. And what happens is that when you're using that frequency, even if when he gets home, he really just means to be a commander, that the toxic side of it is expressed as a dictator. And if you look back, maybe President Clinton was a motivator, but you could also see him being a performer, and President Bush, I think, was definitely like a commander. And he, one time, we were at a meeting and he said, after he said, Osama bin Laden, bring it on, his wife said, you can't do that. You're the president of the United States. And he said, yeah, but I'm a Texan first. And what he's actually saying is, I can't help it. It's my frequency. And I honestly, if we're going to dissect politicians, I think this was Kamala Harris's problem. Is that I think Kamala is inherently a commander challenger. And they did not want to let her be a commander challenger because it wouldn't come across well. And so they were trying to get her to be a seer healer. And it was completely inauthentic. Because she doesn't have that frequency. It's better to be your frequency healthy than another frequency false.
Wait, say that one more time. It's better to be your frequency
healthy than to be another frequency false. And so like I'm a maven, and that's the frequency that comes out when I'm not thinking.
Okay.
Because it's not something I have, it's something I am.
Yeah.
It's a neurological pathway. It's the way you think, the way you see reality.
Yeah.
And so I see the world differently, and then I have to translate it to see it the same. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
And so when I look at the Bible, I see it completely differently. Then I have to work at making it the same.
Now, do you think, because I think I've been a challenger, but after trauma, I've become a healer. Do you change? Do you
No.
grow?
You're a healer.
Okay.
And after trauma, you would become a cipher
Oh.
if you don't respond well to the trauma.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I can see the challenger in me consistently throughout my life. But then I went through some suffering, which made me more empathetic to people. And then the healer has come out more in this season of my life.
See, what I would say is that the healthy healer came out more. The trauma made you more empathetic of other people's pain.
Okay.
But before, you may have only been empathetic to your own pain.
That's good.
Okay?
Okay.
But the challenger part of you, this is what I know about healers a lot of times.
Okay.
And is that healers always use that frequency with new people. But when they have a team of people they work with all the time, they stop using their healer frequency because, like, I healed you last year. So when you're married, are you married?
I am, and I'm not liking this.
And how long you been married?
19 years.
19 years, right?
Yeah.
So probably early on you used your healer frequency with her a lot, and you were like, "Baby, it's gonna be okay. I love you. You know, we're gonna get through this." But then after like year 12, like, you should already be over that.
Yikes.
And so you're only using your challenger with her.
Oh, man.
And then if you're not careful, you're only going to use your commander.
Ooh.
Because you should already know I've healed you. You know I believe in you and challenge you. So I'm just going to tell you what you need to do.
Ooh.
Do you have kids?
Yes.
How old are your kids?
17, 16, 13.
See, 17, 16, 13, you have to be careful because they may only experience your commander.
That's it. That's what, yes.
And you're wondering, how come they can't see my healer? In fact, they'll become bitter towards your healer because they see you healing everyone else, but only commanding them.
All right. I'm done. This is done. That's really good.
And this is why this goes deep. Yeah.
Yeah, specifically as you talk about kids, I'm like, these are areas I really want to grow in.
Yeah.
So yeah, what would you, I guess, if someone is saying, oh, why do people need to understand these frequencies?
Several reasons. Because they're our default mode. We don't think we're using a frequency. We think we're just being ourselves. And so you're like, can't you get me? And you go, no, I can't. You're not on the same wavelength, same frequency. We're not on the same page. And then when you're communicating with someone, you're assuming all that's happening is a transference of information. Information travels inside of the frequencies. They hear the frequency and then they interpret the information. So if I say, I love you, and I change it to, I love you. Same words, but the frequency changes. Or it's, yeah, I love you. And one can actually be a statement of value. Another one can be a statement of derision. And same words. So when you're talking to your kids and all they're hearing is commander, but it's coming from a deeply empathetic place of healer, you're trying to save your kids from pain. But you're too impatient or tired to do the hard work of using the healer frequencies, or you're going right to the commander. And you're just assuming they're gonna fill in the blanks. That dad loves you. That really, I'm looking for your well-being, your best outcome. It gets lost in translation. So the goal isn't simply to be heard. But the other side of it is also is hearing. Your kids have frequencies.
Yeah.
And so you may have one kid who's more of a challenger, one who's more of a healer. You may have a kid who's a maven and you don't get them.
Yep.
And for me, this is interesting. I always had my mom's awesome. She's still alive. She's sharp mind. One of the gifts God gave me was to let me be born to my mom. Brilliant lady. But we always had distance between us. I always felt disconnected and didn't feel seen or understood. And even as an adult, she would say, I'm so sorry, I didn't understand you. I gave her the 7 frequencies, and I gave my brother, who's my older brother, the 7 frequencies. I always felt like they had a connection. And so the way you interpret that when you're 8 is she loves him more. They have the exact same frequencies. They just just got each other. And Alex was an 8-year-old version of her. They had the same frequencies. They understood each other. They had the same language.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Paris speaking English. and so then when I gave them the assessments, my brother's number 7 is Maven, and my mom's number 7 is Maven. Then my number 1 is Maven. And when I saw that, even here at 66, I felt great healing. I went, she didn't love me less. She just understands me less.
Yeah.
I'm an alien.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not her fault that she gave birth to an alien. Because that's by God's design. But entrusted me to her.
Yeah.
Right? You know, but even, you know, to this day, I know that she will not understand what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, or what I'm saying. But she can appreciate me.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember she would say things, you know, like, your brother's a genius. And of course he is, because they speak at a level that makes sense. It matches them, you know. And me, I'm the one that they sent to a psychiatrist at the age of 10 because they couldn't make sense of me.
Yeah.
And they were right. I was definitely not only out of my mind, but I was definitely broken. And, you know, now everybody's in therapy, but you can't imagine what this is like in the 60s. It's no one goes to a psychiatrist back then. You're crazy, you know. But it was actually life-giving for me because that psychiatrist understood the language I spoke.
Yeah.
And it changed everything for me in the journey. Yeah.
I'm grateful for the uniqueness of your journey. I'm grateful for you owning it, because I think there are people who speak on different frequencies. And as I've grown and matured, I've come to appreciate the global church and all that it offers. And it's not diced up in these nice, neat little sections. And, you know, I'm grateful to have been able to sit with all that you offer now in a healthier place. And I'm thankful for what you offer the world. And I look forward to learning more. Now I have to go do some homework, especially with my older son. I feel like we're on the same frequency, but I want to learn. So.
And learn his frequency.
Yeah.
And learn how he communicates. And you may consider it defiance, and he may be a commander.
It's exciting. It's exciting to learn and to build connection.
It is.
So.
And thank you so much for having me. You gave me so much street cred with my kids. So it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Hey, we all got to hang out sometime. I love them. They sound like great kids.
They are.
Maybe
they're
I get
fantastic.
some Japanese denim from y'all.
Oh, there you go.
But thank you again. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Blessings.
Yeah.
Oh, hey there. I'm Lecrae. Now, I know you probably think this is going to be a podcast episode for the deep, but it's not. So for all of you who are planning on swimming in the deep end, come a little closer. What you may not know is that I'm a rapper. And if you didn't know I was a rapper, you may have never been to any of my shows. So when I go on tour, you might see a little bit of this. Or you might see a little bit of that. It'll be a good time. Because, I mean, I'm a rapper.
Probably think I do this for the pesos. I just preach the message, I can't say so.
This is The Deep End with Lecrae.